gets a chance. All right, I see we are live. We'll give it another 15 seconds just to make sure everyone can get in. All right, excellent. First of all, thank you to Andrew for setting this all up. Thank you to Craft Beer Professionals for having us. This is one of my favorite ways to showcase what we're doing here at Precision Fermentation. For those of you who might not be familiar with our company, we are making a real-time fermentation monitoring system that will gather data from your tanks and send it straight to whatever device you choose, along with any alerts that we'll discuss here in a second, and all the data you need to make your beer better and more efficient. So with that, we're going to jump into our console. So the BrewMonitor system is what we're making here, and it's made up of two parts. The first is the sensor hub, which is about a shoebox-sized box that attaches directly to your tank through a tri-clamp port. It gathers fluid, gathers data, and then sends it wirelessly through Wi-Fi to the cloud, and that reports directly to any device that you choose through this web app. So we're going to run through our web app. We call this the BrewMonitor console. This is the landing page. When you open the BrewMonitor console, this is what you see first, and it is essentially a snapshot of your fermentations in progress. So this first one here we'll discuss. Right at the top, you see a bar that says dissolved oxygen. Those bars are your parameters that we measure. The gray bar goes from 0 to 50. That is the range of the sensor itself. And there's a green bar in the middle there. That is the range of the alerts that you'll have set up. So you can customize the alerts on a per fermentation basis. You can set up a baseline of alerts. That will automatically autofill when you start a fermentation. And then there's that little white notch just there, and that is an indicator of your current measurement. When that current measurement strays outside the window that you've set, the green bar, the bar turns red. At that point, the system will alert you if you've set up the alert. So you can input a cell phone number or an email address, and it will send you an alert of what tank the alert is being sent from, as well as how far out of the parameter it has gone. So with that, we will go into looking at a fermentation. So this is fermentation data from a real fermentation. This is from one of our customers. It's all been anonymized. So the first thing that I personally like to look at as soon as you start a fermentation is the dissolved oxygen level. This is obviously critical for yeast health, right? It's critical for cellular membrane growth and healthy yeast as you serially repitch. We like to see this drop off immediately, within the first several hours. Occasionally for like a lager fermentation, it may go a little slower, but a nice rapid dissolved oxygen drop is very important as the yeast consume all that oxygen and start reproducing. pH is also an important indicator of yeast health very early on. You'll see that pH slope off as the yeast start producing organic acids, start readying the environment for fermentation. Right here, we see gravity. This is a nice gentle gravity curve. This is, I think I mentioned it, this is a stout fermentation. So it starts fairly high and ends also fairly high, a little residual sugar left in the beer. This beer has also undergone some spunding. We can see that here from the pressure graph. The brewer bunged this tank with a spunding device on it, set to right around 15 psi, about a bar. Fluid temperature is a really fascinating parameter to measure in real time, because we can actually see cooling jackets cycling here during the peak of fermentation. And then we see these step downs as they step cool this tank to crash it. Ambient temperature is just a measurement of your cellar temperature. We found it's kind of important to correlate how well your cooling jackets are working against your ambient temperature. Here in North Carolina during the summer, things get way hotter than we want them to be. So we've seen some problems potentially arise with that. And then down here, we can put in our brew sheets, any type of information you want to include with the fermentation. And this here is our data. It's all down here in a table that you can export as a CSV. If you'd like to do any type of data manipulation on your own, graphing by yourself, that's available for you right there. A couple of new features that we have just rolled out fairly recently. We can now overlay series on top of each other within the same fermentation. And so a couple of things that we found interesting from that, for instance, if you want to overlay dissolved oxygen on top of gravity, you can see that this dissolved oxygen has dropped straight off before the gravity started to drop. You can also do pH. These two are pretty analogous. Conductivity. We know conductivity drops off during the peak of fermentation simply from CO2 production. CO2 in the line can cause that conductivity measurement to fall. So one more fermentation that I wanted to show is a double knockout. This is a Kolsch fermentation, and we can tell it's got a double knockout through a couple parameters. The first is a spike in dissolved oxygen because both of the knockouts were oxygenated in this particular fermentation. There's also a slight bump in gravity. The second knockout may have been very slightly higher in gravity than the first, or in this case, the fermentation actually started to kick off a little bit. And so the total gravity of the tank started to drop off, and then we added a charge of fresh wort, which bumped up the gravity a bit. Pressure is a great indicator of knockouts, multiple knockouts. As the fluid level rises, hydrostatic pressure increases and increases the pressure. And here again, we have a really nice representation of fluid cycling, or fluid jacket cycling, I should say. All right. Jump here out of full screen. And we have a couple minutes here for questions. If you want to put them in the comments there, I'm happy to address them. If not, I'm going to continue to go through some of the new capabilities we've just released for the BrewMonitor console. So let's pick, that's a lager, that's a Pilsner, and this also appears to be a Pilsner. So this is our fermentation comparison tool. So I've just selected up to 3 fermentations, and we can compare them directly across all of their parameters. So first here is dissolved oxygen. We can see that this LG35 lager was oxygenated much more heavily than the other 2. We can compare gravity curves across these 3. In this portion, you can also zoom, get a better look at any particular data set you'd like. You can take screenshots of these data sets. We'll jump back. Another capability that we've just released. Oops, that is not the one with it. We'll go back to that stout. We have released this ability to optimize our gravity. So we saw earlier there was this gap in gravity as the CO2 production caused some instability with the density sensor that we're using. We've developed an algorithm to take that data and optimize it to make this graph look nice and clean. And you can compare them side by side and see how good of a job that algorithm did cleaning that data up. And there we are. Finally, one more feature that we are rolling out is our benchmarking. So this is the first of our benchmarking steps. you'll be able to choose any fermentation you like from any of your brands as a flagship fermentation, as fermentation that says this one created the best beer of this style. Once you select that data set, you can overlay that data set over any of these other fermentations to compare them side by side. A couple more changes will be coming to that here in a few days, or excuse me, a few weeks. And that is my time. Thank you so much, everybody. Please stop by our virtual booth if you have any questions. We'll be around there. Thank you so much.